Right. Well, welcome everyone and those watching in the future on YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about preparations for a new caregiver. My name is Kendall. I'm one of the social workers here at the Orange County Department on Aging. And with me is Marie Dagger, our occupational therapist. So we're going to split the presentation today and talk about a lot of different areas of caregiving preparation. So I'm going to actually let Marie go first.
Thanks, Kendall. Great to be here with you today. And so, yeah, like Kendall said, we're kind of going to split the presentation, and the area that I'm going to be chatting with y'all about is preparing your home, preparing that space that you're going to be caregiving in to make sure that environment can be as useful and helpful to you and the person you're caring for. Just trying to make sure everybody stays safe and happy and healthy while they're in that environment together. And so we're going to address kind of three physical areas of the home, but knowing that everybody's home is a little bit different, everybody's way of staying in their home is a little bit different. So this will be kind of an overarching view of things, but things to consider, things to think about in terms of access to the home is our first area, thinking about bathrooms, and then thinking about living areas. But two, questions to consider just overall when you're thinking about preparing your home. And we can go back a slide if you want to, Kendall, there we go. But, just questions to consider is, whose home are you preparing to? Is it your home? Is it maybe a sibling's or another parent, maybe a other parent situation that you're preparing their home for? And, when you're choosing that is, considering the comfort of the space. Where are you and that person going to be most comfortable staying for? Is this a short-term situation or a longer-term situation? Or is this going to be a situation where you are going to be in and out as a caregiver, or they are going to be needing care on and off for a long duration? Considering the type of safety concerns in different spaces, the number of safety concerns in different spaces, the location of each person's home. So if right now you're a long distance caregiver, but that person's going to need closer caregiving than you're providing right now, what location, whether it's across the country or not, which location makes the most sense for you all. Thinking about service availability when you're choosing the place, which area are you in, works with their insurance, which has, an awesome department on aging that can help out. Which like home health or other outpatient therapies make the most sense for that situation. And then considering, that person's needs and what makes sense for, where their best healing or their best support is going to take place. But with that, also considering your needs as a caregiver and what makes sense for your routine in your world. And that's never going to be an easy decision. That's a lot of different factors that are probably going to be pulling in different directions, but kind of weighing those differences and deciding what might not be the best. There is no best choice in these kinds of situations, typically not. But which one makes the most sense for the situation you're in right now to meet the most needs? So yeah, just weighing that out as best you can. But we can go on to the next slide now, Kendall. So thinking about, that first category I mentioned is access. So getting in and getting out of the home. And so, thinking about not just the person you're caring for, but if you're helping them and supporting them to get in and out of the house, can we do that safely? Can we, if there were an emergency, if the smoke detector went off and there was a fire in the kitchen, could you both get out of the home safely? Thinking about this access challenge, is this a short-term or a long-term need? Is it just because of a recent surgery and hopefully in a few weeks or months you'll be healed up again, or the person will be healed up again and able to manage, those steps again pretty easily? Or is this more of a long-term, maybe a chronic condition, a degenerative condition that's going to make things more challenging in the years to come? And then thinking too about how often do we need to exit the home or enter the home? Is this just, maybe a doctor's appointment every few months and we're kind of most of the time the care or the needs or whatever concerns are coming to the person in the home? Or maybe there are routine outpatient therapy visits, or maybe there's dialysis 3 times a week. And that kind of changes the importance and the risk that you're taking, having to go in and out that with that much frequency too. And there are a lot of options, a lot of choices when it comes to improving access to the home. We can go on to that next slide, Kendall. So thinking about, the easiest is probably just making sure your steps and your railings are really secure, really stable. Sometimes over the years, they can become a little wobbly. If they're wooden, maybe a little rot's coming in there. But that's pretty straightforward to be able to fix and strengthen up again. So if steps feel okay for the person, and really maybe it's just 2 or 3 steps to get in, and you could be right there next to them along with that stable railing, that might be a perfectly reasonable option and a reasonable choice. It's just kind of weighing out what works and what works for y'all's situation. But if those standard steps aren't working, there are several other choices. So the next one on my list there is walker steps. And if you look in the bottom right-hand picture, that's what walker steps look like. So they're much wider. So a full walker or a person with a cane could stand safely on each step, and then they're about half the height of a normal step. So about 3 or 4 inches rather than the 7 or 8 that you would normally see in a tread height. And they're just a whole lot easier and gentler to step up. You don't have to worry about lifting that hip and that knee quite so high. And because they are steps, they don't need quite as much area as a ramp does. So if, maybe balance is a little bit of a concern, but the person still feels safe lifting up just those couple of inches for the step, that can be a really nice alternative too. The ones here in the picture are made out of concrete, but you can build them out of wood too. There's plenty of options for those. Also thinking too about ramps. Ramps are probably the most well-known, the most traditional option when access is a challenge. They come in wood or aluminum varieties. That's just really an aesthetic choice, but also a cost choice too. So the wood ones, that we tend to think of those as the more permanent ramp option. They tend to get installed. They have the footings deep into the ground. You can have a little more creativity with the design of them. You can paint them up if you want to, match the maybe aesthetics of your home a little bit easier, but they can come with a little bit more time for installation. They're a little more cost associated with them sometimes. Whereas the aluminum ones, installation happens in a snap. They're kind of a prefab kind of thing. There's several companies around that can take care of those for you. And some companies also offer rental options for these aluminum ramps. So maybe say somebody's just had a hip or a knee surgery and they're in a wheelchair for now, but it's not going to be a long-term option. Renting a ramp for that short term might be a better solution than installing a permanent one. So again, just knowing that those options exist out there. But then too, sometimes a ramp isn't always the most cost or space efficient option. We typically recommend that for every inch of rise you have, a whole foot of run. So if you have 7, 8, 10, 15 stairs going into your home, a ramp really might not be a feasible option, especially if you're on a hill too. I'm thinking about a home I saw a few months back. It was probably 25 stairs on a steep hill, and they were asking about a ramp, and it's just not a feasible option for the way their house is set up or the way it's located on that lot and on that slope. So in those situations, some more mechanical options might be a safer bet for that. So there's something called a vertical platform lift. I think of this as like an outdoor elevator, but a little less complicated. You don't need the whole quite as much technology supporting that, but that's in the bottom left-hand picture that you're seeing there. And it's just a small platform big enough for a person with a walker or a wheelchair to, glide safely onto. You have the controls to lift a person up and down, and it's just that vertical movement in space to really easily move a person from up to down. And then there are also stair lifts that are designed for outdoor use as well. So, the person would transfer onto that seat and then the seat would glide them up that existing staircase. I will say one caveat with a stair lift is that you do want to make sure that the person who's using it has good trunk support, they have good balance, good seating balance, really good control over that upper body, because they're going to have to maintain that balance as they glide up that staircase. And so if you're worried about that person's balance or their ability to maybe understand the need to stay still and stay seated while the seat's moving, then that's not always the best choice. And these mechanical options, they do come with a higher price tag, unfortunately, but it really does depend on, the length of the lift that you need, and what specific maybe features you're looking for in that technology. But with any tech, with any home renovation, I recommend getting multiple quotes, just so you know what you're getting into before you sign anything on the dotted line there. And with most of these things, unfortunately, insurance doesn't really help cover these too much. But I know the Advantage plans are getting more creative with what they're starting to offer. So I always suggest calling that plan, is Advantage plan the right term, Kendall? That's what's coming to mind at the moment. Yes, I always suggest calling them, double checking with them. And even if they're not offering it right now, if they get enough people calling to ask, I'm hoping one day they'll start offering coverage for these types of things. So it's just a little way of adding advocacy in for the next caregiver who calls, hopefully. Any questions about access options before I move on to bathrooms? Okay, we can move on to that next slide then, thinking about bathrooms. So I did not take this picture of a toilet up on, a small platform there with stairs, but I have seen these situations before. I don't know what design era it was that put toilets up on a platform as if they are actually a throne. But it's, definitely interesting design choice, but it also is very interesting for accessibility to the toilet too, and just thinking about the challenge that presents. And so when we're thinking about the bathroom, thinking about, again, can the person get to the toilet? Is there enough space for you to be near them to support them if they need that near the toilet? How safe or stable are they while using it? And on the flip side with that, I haven't seen any showers up on a pedestal yet, but I'm sure they're out there. But can the person safely get to the shower or to the bathtub? And how safe are they using that shower or bathtub as well? And, that's not just, within the bathroom itself, but thinking too, is the only bathroom upstairs in a 2-story home. Or maybe there's a half bath downstairs so they can get to the toilet, but they can't get to the shower upstairs. Or I have seen situations too where the bathroom door is narrower than other doorways in the household, and they can't actually get their walker or their wheelchair into the bathroom itself. And there's a few different, for that specific situation, there's a few different considerations. I know the easiest fix, and it works well very, very often, is typically on rolling walkers, the standard like metal two wheels on the front, tennis balls on the back style. You'll see those front wheels kind of on the outside of the post. You can actually take those off and flip which side the wheels are on, so that you've got the post and the wheels on the inside, and that actually saves you about an inch. And more often than not, that'll get you straight through that doorway. But if not, we can always brainstorm around other options to help that don't involve completely renovating the bathroom door. And we can go on to the next slide there, Kendall, thinking about bathroom options specifically around toileting. So there's a few options that I can kind of consider quickish fixes. And these really include, different like accessibility devices, different, we call it durable medical equipment that can be used to make things a little bit easier, a little bit safer. And typically this includes, maybe adding a little extra height to the seat. So if the seat's a little bit too low for a person and they really struggle to get up from it, or they find themselves when they go to sit plopping down on it, that really leads to a risky situation, something that they may encounter a fall while that's happening. And so a couple of things you can do to raise that height a little bit is add a bedside commode over the top of the toilet. That's that upper right-hand picture there. And that gives them not only the extra height, it can be 1 inch higher, it can be 5 inches higher. It's completely adjustable to their needs. But you also have those handrails on either side too, so the person has a little something to hold on to help feel a little bit safer, a little bit more secure. You can also try using a toilet riser, and this works very similarly to the bedside commode. That's that upper left-hand picture there. And the style I prefer, it actually bolts in at the back where the toilet seat bolts in. So it's really secure, it's really stable. It's a pretty standard height that it adds. It's about 3.5 inches across brands. And they come with or without those handles on there. So again, extra height, extra stability with those handholds. But they just don't have those extra legs on them so if it's a really tight space in your bathroom, not having those extra legs can help a little bit with, just not accidentally kicking or tripping over those legs of the bedside commode. If the person doesn't need the extra height to the toilet, but they really would benefit from those handrails, you can install something called toilet assist rails. And again, these just bolt onto the back right where that toilet seat does. And there's several different styles of them, some without the legs, some with the legs. They just give that little bit of extra support for a person to hold on to. And that's something that's pretty easy that you or another family member can install yourselves with it too. But another alternative to that too, is I just wanted to mention, if getting to the toilet seems to be a challenge, if it's maybe something that's happening in the middle of the night, something that just access to the bathroom when a person's in a hurry specifically seems to be a challenge, you can also consider using that bedside commode beside their bed, beside their preferred seating chair in the living room, just to, again, take some of the worry, take some of that stress away from trying to get to the bathroom in time. And something about decreasing that stress level just makes it a whole lot easier. I know folks don't really like having their bathroom set up in their bedroom or the living room, but it's kind of, again, balancing that danger of almost tripping over yourself trying to get to the bathroom in time versus that odd sensation of having using the bathroom in your own bedroom. So it's balancing it out. I always encourage folks to just give it a try, just to see how it feels, see if that's, a weird feeling that they can overcome in order to decrease that risk of having that fall on your hurried way to the bathroom. Along those same lines, thinking about our gentlemen, the handheld urinals can offer that same support too, just as another alternative to not trying to rush to the bathroom when you're in a hurry and you have that urgent need. So those are all kind of quick fix solutions. We also have a few bigger fixes, things that are a little bit more involved to get installed that can offer some of the same safety features. One would be grab bars. So installing grab bars, I typically recommend them horizontally next to that toilet there. So again, they can offer that support as you're pushing up or, slowly lowering yourself down to the toilet. and they're typically installed into the studs in the wall, so they are secure. They're not going to go anywhere, and you don't have to worry about them loosening up over time at all. You could also consider an accessible height toilet, sometimes called a handicapped accessible toilet. And that's a toilet that's just naturally a little bit higher than our standard ones. I think they're typically maybe 3 or 4 inches higher than normal ones. So you don't have to install any extra device. It's just a toilet that is naturally a little bit higher. So if you're worried about the aesthetics of what things look like, that might be an option for you. And then in our bottom right-hand picture there, you can see what we call a toilet elevator. And so it's just this little platform that you can install underneath of the toilet itself. And again, it adds that 3 or 4 extra inches. So you're still, sitting on the toilet itself. The toilet itself feels the same, but the whole thing has just moved up a little bit higher to give that little extra height. So you don't have to worry about that plopping to sit down or the trickiness in trying to get up from a lower height. But any questions about toileting before I move on to bathing? Okay. And you keep me honest with my time, Kendall. I can talk about this stuff for forever if I need to. So bathroom options. Again, we've got a few quick fixes that might be helpful. If, again, this is going to be a short-term situation and you feel like getting to the bathroom will become easier or more accessible in the near future, you can consider just taking a bird bath, just taking a sponge bath, washcloth bath. It doesn't feel as good as the shower, but as a short-term option rather than risking your safety and risking a fall, risking your safety as a helper when a person's in an incredibly vulnerable space. Maybe considering that, partial bath option as a choice, as a short-term option, knowing that, hey, maybe things will change over time and they'll get a little bit easier for us. Grab bars could fit either under the quick fix or the bigger fix option here. In our upper right hand picture there, you see a clamp on grab bar. These are a really great choice for those bathtubs when maybe you don't have the time or the finances to get actual grab bars installed, but these do kind of clamp onto the side of the tub there and just give you that little extra leverage as you're going over to step into that tub. I will say that I can't at this point recommend any of the suction cup grab bars. I know they're a very popular and well advertised version, but just the ones that are on the market right now, the suction cups are just not reliable. I can't in good conscience recommend anybody use those. Just the risk of them coming off the wall at exactly the wrong time, and just leading to more injury for you and the person you're caring for. So if you can, please avoid those, and try to get grab bars installed in the studs in that position, or trying something like a clamp on grab bar like this. There are also several different kinds of seating options. In the upper left picture there, you'll see a picture of a tub transfer bench. That's one of my favorite seating options, especially for tubs, because it allows folks to sit down on that bench outside the tub and then slide in and swing their legs into the tub without ever having to step over that threshold. And having that seating option in the tub, in the shower, can be really important just if folks are maybe feeling a little bit weaker, their balance isn't as good, they're feeling a little dizzy with that hot water. Having that seating choice is a really helpful option. And just because the seat's in there does not mean a person needs to sit throughout the shower. They absolutely can, but if it's a person who maybe they feel okay most of the time but do need rest breaks, it's okay to alternate and stand up and sit down as you need to, depending on what you're bathing. And if you are sitting, it's incredibly useful to have one of those handheld shower heads so you can direct the water where you need it to rather than just having that rainstorm constantly coming down on you. And then, of course, making sure you have a non-skid mat in your bathroom as well, something that can absorb all that excess water but isn't going to go sliding on you. So it's really, safe and secure and sticks well to that floor that you've got in your bathroom. Bigger fixes for the long term, thinking about maybe a low threshold shower or a no threshold shower, something where you don't have to step over that big ledge to get into the tub, or even some walk-in showers have a good 3 or 4 inches. And for some folks, that's just too much. That's really hard to balance. Standing on one foot and then trying to step over onto a slippery surface. So for bigger changes, definitely something to consider. Another big fix would be a full bathroom on the ground floor of your home, if that's something you don't already have. And that could be, maybe just slightly expanding a bathroom space you already have. It could involve adding a whole addition onto your home. And that's really a, personal choice for your needs, and knowing that would be for definitely a longer term caregiving situation than a shorter term one. But knowing that is an option, and I'm always glad to chat more about what that option could look like for folks. Any questions about bathrooms in general before I hop into living spaces? Okay. So living spaces, things to think about are, are our walking paths clear? Are they well lit? We want to make sure, if we can to, clear out those walking spaces, we want to make sure there's enough room for a walker, enough room for a wheelchair. But being aware too, there are some times when people do what we call furniture walking. So maybe it feels like a narrow space to us, but as we observe a person moving through their space, we see, oh, wait, they're touching the back of that couch as they're walking down the hallway, or they're touching onto that, table as they're moving. And so we just need to be really cognizant of, what are their touch and balance points? And are we going to be causing more of a fall risk by moving furniture further away and increasing that walking space than leaving it narrow and closed in? And I can't give you a prescription for knowing what the right choice is, but just staying observant of how a person is moving through their spaces. Thinking too about, preferred seating, including, not just their favorite chair in the living room, but their bedside too. Is it an easy height for moving between sitting and standing positions? Paying attention to, is there a chair with armrests available? And then in the picture I've got here, are there preferred items within easy reach? If a person's hanging out in the living room all day, can they get to their preferred snacks when they need them? Is there water available to sip on? Can they get to that TV remote or any other activities they want to be doing? Are these things within reach? Or are they going to be tempted to, lean and bend, or maybe they're not supposed to get up X number of times a day, get up to try to grab something without support? So if we can keep those preferred items right nearby, we're going to lessen the chance of a person maybe injuring themselves right post-surgery because they're trying to get to something that they know they want, but maybe they think, oh, it's right there, I can just grab it real quick, it'll be okay. We know those thoughts go through our heads. They're things that we all think. But like right after a surgery, for example, we might not necessarily recognize the limits that we have. So if we as a caregiver can go ahead and set that person up for success by putting those things they're going to want right there next to them, hopefully we'll lessen the chance of a re-injury post whatever surgery they might have had. So if we move on to that next slide there, Kendall. So thinking about, different adaptations, different changes we can make. Definitely, if we can, adding night lights, adding motion sensing lights, adding, hey, Alexa, turn on the lights. I'm sorry if either of you have Alexa. but knowing that those are all options and choices just to increase the lighting in a space. And again, that as easy as we can make it to turn on that lighting, the more likely we are to use it, and the decreased risk we have of maybe having a trip or a fall because of that darkness. Consider adding risers under the legs of a chair, under the legs of a bed. You see the risers on the couch there in the photo. And again, sometimes our furniture is just a little too low for us, and we might struggle to get up or to get down, or for a week following a surgery or procedure of some sort. Adding those few extra inches can really make a big difference in terms of being able to get up or safely get down without plopping onto that piece of furniture. And the risers come in, I feel like, 1/2 inch increments all the way up to 6+ inches. I feel like beyond 6 inches, it starts to make me a little nervous. I don't have any research around that, but I think going too high maybe just feels a little bit risky, but definitely adding 3-4 inches, the risers easily come in those heights. And then, but if you need extra height, but maybe your furniture isn't set up to add those risers under the legs, you can always add a seat cushion, something that's nice and firm, gives some good support. Nothing with too many like buttons on it, because just for the texture and the pressure, that can feel really awkward to sit on for long periods. But just, yeah, adding, a nice, good, firm cushion underneath can also add a little bit of height to that seat as well. And then I always recommend, avoiding chairs that swivel or slide really easily. A person who maybe newly needs caregiving support, or maybe they're newly in, receiving this much assist, or their body is not working the way it was just a few weeks ago. Maybe they are, really used to being able to manage where that chair is and compensate with their body to be able to sit in it how they want to. But if they've had a sudden change in health status or a sudden change in physical ability, they might not be able to manage that swivel as easily, or not be able to recognize, oh, the chair is slid over a couple inches. I need to, recalibrate where my body is in space to safely land on that chair when I go to sit. So if you can, avoiding those, just to keep a chair available that's really secure, really, it's not going to move very easily on the person unless they intend it to be moving with them. Yeah, and then I think I didn't put a note on here, but I just really like this image of, like kitchen organizer. I mentioned keeping things within reach while a person's maybe hanging out in the living room all day, but this applies to other areas of the home as well. So, keeping preferred snacks right within reach. If they want to get themselves a glass of water, a cup of tea or something, keeping those items, easily, handily available in the kitchen so they can grab it and they don't have to go reaching and bending and finding and searching for things, just to keep things as easy and straightforward, as simple as possible. And that also facilitates them able to do for themselves. And maybe, you in your new caregiving role, you've already got a lot on your plate. So there's simple things like getting a glass of water that the person can do for themselves. Then that helps to ease your burden a little bit as well. Okay, I think we can go on to the next slide there, Kendall. Just a couple of resources for y'all to think about. I really love AARP's Home Fit Guide. It's a phenomenal resource. I definitely recommend checking it out if you have not already. You're also welcome to do a little self-assessment of your home. Both the CDC and Rebuilding Together has some nice checklists. You can kind of go through your home, put an eye to things, see what's going on. But you can also get a home safety evaluation with an occupational therapist. So if the person you're caring for is receiving home health services, their home health OT can definitely do a little bit of looking at the home and will probably make some recommendations specifically around the areas and the goals that they're working towards. But if you want a more comprehensive look, and as long as you're in Orange County, I'm glad to do that with you. Right now, I'm only offering virtual based options, but I'm hoping in the next few weeks that I can move towards maybe coming back out into homes again, but I don't have a date for that yet. And then knowing too that if you do want to try out any of these durable medical equipment items, we're glad to loan those to you through the Department on Aging as well, just knowing that those are available for you. But any questions about preparing your home? I know that was a whole lot of information in about a half an hour. So I'm always glad to meet with folks individually too, to talk about your specific situations.
Well, if you have any questions towards the end, we will definitely leave time for that. And I believe both of our contact information is on the last slide. So you can definitely reach out to us afterwards as well. So thank you, Marie. I feel like I learn something new every time I hear you speak, and we work together. So it's always great. So now that Maria's talked about preparing your home and your physical space, I'm going to talk a little bit about preparing yourself and your family and your loved one for this new relationship of caregiver, care partner, care recipient, and how that dynamic looks in a couple of different ways. So first, take a breath, because I know we've gone over a lot of information, but just in general, this is a big undertaking. So applauds for everyone taking on this responsibility and this role, because it definitely is a lot. So the first thing I want you all to think about is managing your expectations. So kind of the two things I tend to see people do when they become caregivers is either A, they underestimate the time and energy that caregiving takes, or B, they assume that because this person needs some help with some things that they're going to need to do everything for this person. And one thing we really recommend is allowing someone to be as independent as possible for as long as possible, because no one wants to lose their independence. So if someone is able to do some tasks safely, then by all means, definitely let them do it. It's good for them because they maintain their independence, but it's also good for you because it's one less thing that you have to take on. So just reflect about why you're entering this new role, what has happened that's led you to this decision, and what this person really needs from you versus what you think that they might need. So having that conversation with them as well and managing those expectations on both sides is really important to start things off. So before you either move someone into your home or start coming into their space to enter that caregiving situation, thinking about what the boundaries are going to be. So thinking about physical boundaries, if you're moving someone into your home, it can be really important to make sure that everyone has a space that can be their own. Obviously, if an emergency happens and someone comes running in, that's one thing, but for the most part, it's nice to have a space that if you go in there and close the door, you're not going to be bothered unless you're really needed. So bedroom, office, or section of the home. And at the same time, thinking about your care recipient, making sure they have a space of their own, because this is a transition for them as well, to be moving into a new place and with all these people around. Maybe they're used to living alone. So making sure everyone has some space to call their own and to have some quiet alone time. But there's also, aside from those physical boundaries, there are some invisible boundaries, and maybe those are tasks you're willing to do or things that you just cannot do, cannot handle. Language to be used. A lot of people don't like those being ordered to do things. A lot of times we see people when they have a care recipient move in, they say, okay, just sit there, just wait for me, I'll do everything. So a lot of people don't like that. So thinking about, how you're going to communicate and what those boundaries are going to be. And also time that you're available. Again, emergencies happen. Sometimes people need things in the middle of the night, but for the most part, thinking about if there are certain times of day that, you don't want to take on some important tasks and how those things are going to get taken care of at different times of day. And communicating that with your care recipient. So all of this, I should say, is important to communicate with your person so that you're walking this path with them and not doing things to them, because it's an adjustment for both of you. So as you kind of enter this new role, thinking about all these new responsibilities that you may be taking on, it's going to be important to manage your time. So a couple of pieces with that are prioritizing the tasks that you need to do. Think about what is actually necessary and what is something that you just do because you've always done it. We talk about this a lot during the holidays of there are some things that we do every year at the holidays. We go caroling, we make this big meal, we do all these different decorations, we do all these things. What's actually necessary versus what's something you just do because that's something you've always done, and learning what's important and what's just something that you do because you always have. And prioritizing, once you've narrowed down those important tasks, think about what's most important now, what's going to be important a little later, what can I put off, what needs to be done more urgently. Um, and once you've got those priorities in place, preparing. So thinking about the days and times that you are the busiest and what can you do ahead of time. So for a lot of people, the busiest time is that like 4 or 5 o'clock. You're getting off of work, the kids need to be picked up from school and taken to soccer practice, and then mom is taking their nap, and then they need their medication, and dinner has to be made at some point in there. So anticipating all those things that are going to be happening, preparing ahead of time can be really helpful. So I'm a big fan of meal prep. That can be something that's really helpful, just to be able to heat up a meal ahead of time, especially when you have someone who's new to your family and maybe is on a different eating schedule. That can be really nice for people to make sure they have something to eat when they're hungry. Cleaning schedules can be really helpful, especially if you have a couple different people in your home, kids and spouses, and even your care recipient. If there's some things that they can help with, that can make them feel included in the household. If you give them some laundry to fold or some task like that that they can do safely. And also putting it on a schedule saves you from all of a sudden you look up and the laundry has to be done. There's a sink full of dishes and no one's vacuumed in 2 weeks. So planning those things out, preparing in advance so that you're not getting caught up in all of that later. Planning outfits is something that I find is helpful for people who are caring for someone. So if you know that you've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, thinking ahead of time, what are you going to wear? What's the weather going to be like? So that can just be pulled out and ready in the morning when you got to get someone ready. And then the hardest part for most people, I think, is delegating. So a lot of times we've taken on this responsibility of caring for someone, and sometimes there's a feeling of duty or necessity. It's something you feel like this is your job and you can't ask anyone else to help you. But that's not the case. Everyone is just one person. There's only so much that one person can do. So thinking about the natural supports in your life, so your friends and your family and your neighbors, this world would be a lot better if we all helped each other out from time and again. So thinking about those people in your life that you can ask for help. And then there's also options in terms of in-home aides and adult daycare and kind of some more paid options. So we'll go over those in a few minutes, but just some things to think about and what are the tasks that you need some help with. So exactly like I was saying about delegating, it's not all on you. So you are not entering this caregiving journey alone. It's really important to have a support team. So thinking about the people who are going to assist this person you're caring for and who are going to assist you. So hopefully they have a good medical team in place. I find it really helpful to have a good primary care provider who communicates well with all these different specialists, home health providers, things like that, because if you're spending all your time trying to keep up with who said what and telling the other person, it can be really challenging. So going to a provider, keep trying to keep a lot of your providers in one health system because they can all communicate easily. Or making sure that paperwork is signed, like releases of information, so that they can communicate with each other, and making that clear with your providers can be really helpful. Thinking about your friends and family, as well as the care recipients' friends and families, especially if you are moving them from a different area away from the friends and family that they've been near. Yes, it's going to be great for them to be there with you, but they're leaving all the people they know behind. So making sure you're able to maintain those connections and make sure that they are able to somehow stay in touch with those friends and family who live further away. The other option is paid caregivers. So there are options for in-home aides, companion care aides, and I'll go into the details about the difference between all of those, but that's maybe an option to consider if you need some extra time. Um, and then support teams for yourself. So caring for yourself, thinking about your friends and your family, your medical providers. We see it all the time that when a caregiver is caring for someone, that person has gone and had all their routine screenings, gone to their physical, gotten all the medical care they need. And then all of a sudden the caregiver looks around and says, I can't remember the last time I went to a doctor for myself. So keeping up with those things, mental health. I am a big proponent of seeing counselors and therapists and psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever's the best fit for you. So that's something to definitely not be ashamed of. It's something I think everyone should do at some point in their life. So keeping that in mind as well. A lot of times when you take on caring for someone, you say, oh, my mom's going to be moving in with us. We're just getting things ready. You'll hear from friends and neighbors and they'll say, oh, let me know if I can do anything for you. And that used to drive me absolutely mad because people kind of tend to offer that, but it's really hard to take someone up on that unless they give you a specific, oh, well, let me know if I can drive this person somewhere, or let me know if I can do this. So it's hard when you're in the moment to think of, oh, what can that person help me with? So start to think of those things and, what are some things I could use help with? What are some tasks that I can delegate to someone else who's offered to help? And what is best that I do for myself? Maybe your mom is really self-conscious about having someone come in to help her bathe, and that's something that you should really take on yourself. But someone else can help with the cleaning or the laundry, and that's fine. But maybe those more intimate tasks are better kept with just you. So thinking about what's best for you and for your care recipient, what's going to make them the most comfortable. So some of the different paid options and for in-home care and some respite care options, there's kind of three different buckets that we think about when we think about having someone come into your home to help you. So the first is companion care, and that we primarily think of as kind of a social visitor. They may be able to do some minor assistance, things like, helping someone get up and kind of walk them to their next location, little things like that, but they're not necessarily going to be doing that personal care, medication management, things like that. So if you have some fears about maybe fall risk or that person's just kind of lonely if you're gone for a few hours, that could be a really good option to just have an extra set of eyes and a friendly face around. Home care is kind of the next level up, and those are usually going to be certified nursing assistants or CNAs, and they can do that assistance with personal care, things like bathing, dressing, toileting, as well as kind of some other household tasks like laundry, some light housekeeping, meal prep, medication management. So that can be a really good option if you just find yourself overwhelmed with those different types of tasks. And then home health is usually something that's ordered by a doctor. It's primarily after some type of an injury or surgery, but it can be brought in at any point. And that's going to be kind of a more skilled care like physical or occupational therapy, speech therapy. On rare occasions, I've heard of RNs going into the home to manage different types of like IV medications or wound care, things like that. So that's usually ordered by a doctor and happens after some type of event, but can be really helpful, especially if getting someone to an outpatient clinic can be really challenging. Having someone come into the home is a huge help. And then another option is adult daycare, which I don't love that we call them daycares, but I guess no one's figured out a better name for them yet. But they're basically a place where older adults usually can go, and there's all types of different activities. They usually will serve lunch or snacks, and they can just have some time to be social with the people around them. They'll have different activities, and they usually will work in some time for rest, and they're well supervised and kept safe. So it's really helpful for a lot of people, especially people who, could really use that full day. And I know a lot of people with those in-home aides, they feel kind of weird taking a break when there's someone else in their home. So that's kind of nice to be able to get the person out of the home so you can kind of have the house to yourself for a little bit. And it's great for your care recipient because, they've got someone around and they can kind of get out and be engaged. So those are kind of the main two options that we think about when we think about getting some help or taking a break. But the question I kind of encourage people to ask is, if you could take one or two tasks off your plate, what would it be? Because another element of this kind of respite care could be taking a task that's not directly related to caregiving off your plate. So things like a cleaning service or landscapers or childcare, things that, in the past we may have thought about as a luxury. But now that you've taken on as this caregiving role and you just maybe don't have time to go out and mow the lawn and pull the weeds, it may be worth, investing in some landscaping services and things like that. If that's able to free up some time for you to, spend with your care recipient or spend on yourself, that can be really helpful to look into. I'll go into some quick little ideas for working caregivers. I'm actually going to be doing a full presentation on this in June. So if this is something that interests you, let me know. I'll make sure we get you signed up for that. But the main thing I like to tell people is to be honest with your employer. They're going to be a lot more understanding if you let them know what's going on versus if all of a sudden things start falling off your plate and you're missing time here and there. So just being upfront usually is going to be your best policy. Couple of ideas, thinking about flexing time. So being able to start early, work late, work different days of the week to fit the times that your person needs more care. So if your person needs a lot of care in the morning, seeing if maybe you can start a little later and go till a little later in the afternoon, if that's going to make things easier for you. The other option is the Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. And you have to have worked with your employer for 1 year. But this gets you 12 weeks of unpaid job protective leave. And a big misconception is that you have to take all 12 weeks at once, but that's not the case. If you want to take, a week here, a week there, or just kind of take a couple afternoons a week off, that's an option to kind of move that time around, which can be really helpful for a lot of people. And it is unpaid leave, so I know that's not practical for a lot of people, but it can be a really helpful tool. And then the other thing that I know a lot of people are not a fan of, but we're probably all used to now, is the idea of working from home. And if that's something that's possible with your job, that can be really helpful just because you have your eyes on your person. But what can be challenging about that is keeping in mind that just because you're home does not mean you're available on both ends. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean you're available to your employer, and just because you're working from home doesn't mean you're always available to your responsibilities at home. So there's still a matter of making sure that you set some boundaries in that, but it can be a really helpful tool when caring for someone. I think this is my last piece here that I wanted to touch on. So preparing your family, because this is not just something that's going to affect you and your care recipient, but it's really going to affect all the other people in your life, because it's changing, the way that you manage your time and your mental health. So thinking about how, if you're moving this new person into your home, how that's going to affect everyone, making sure, hopefully you've discussed this with your spouse, family members, children, whoever else is living there, and what that's going to look like moving this new person in. And maybe, is this the best situation? Yes, it may be the safest option for this person, but if it's really going to mess up your relationships among your immediate family, maybe it's not the best situation, because if you're stressed out among your family, then it's not going to be great for the person who you're bringing in. So it may end up being better for them to remain at home with some additional support. So just something to think about before you kind of take that step. And remembering that, you may have a little bit less privacy or quality time with your other family members. So scheduling things like date nights or time with your children, making sure you make a conscious effort to include those things with your family and not let that caregiving eat up all of your time. I know it's really easy for that to happen, but it's something to make sure that you're prioritizing. And like I started from the beginning, it's important to have those boundaries, both in physical spaces and in your time, knowing that you need to prioritize other areas of your life as well. And just being patient during the adjustment. It's an adjustment for you, for your family, for your care recipient. Everyone's going to be dealing with this new arrangement. So making sure you're patient with each other, give each other some grace. Um, and thinking of the benefits. I know when we're really stressed out and all of a sudden there's this new person here and you're having to do all these new tasks, it can be really stressful. But there's a reason I put a picture of a happy family here, because it really, in so many other cultures, it's so normal for us all to be under one roof among many generations. And there are so many different benefits to having that person close by. There's safety, and it's easier than having to drive back and forth. And you get to spend more time with this person, no matter if this person is moving in with you or you're just kind of taking on this role of caring for them. You get to spend some more time with this person that is really close to you. So making sure that the stress of caregiving does not outweigh the benefits of maintaining that relationship with this person, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. We go safety first and then maintaining the relationship. Those are your two biggest things. So I know that was a lot of information, but here is, this is my information and Marie's information, as well as our aging helpline. We're happy to talk through all types of different caregiving situations with you. Anything really that comes up in regards to aging and caregiving, we're here to talk about it. So for those of you who are watching the recorded version of this, I'll make sure that the link to our website is in the description as well, and you can always reach out to us there. So I will stop recording and we'll go into any questions you may have.